When Chase tried to violate me while he was drunk, my mother stood outside the door and calmly persuaded me. It's your blessing to be favored by the young master. One should know how to be grateful. Consider this as your repayment. After saying that, she thoughtfully closed the door. It was just because she was an Annie of the Chase family. After working there for many years, she had received a lot of favors from the Chase family. But I refused to comply even at the cost of my life. And in the end, I repaid them with my life. Unexpectedly, when I opened my eyes again, I returned to the night before I died. The moment my mother was about to close the door, I desperately broke free from the restraints, and without the slightest hesitation, pushed her into the room. Wasn't it about repayment? As a mother, shouldn't she set an example? I was choked to death by Chase. I sacrificed my life to preserve my chastity. But I regretted it as soon as I died. Why? It shouldn't be me who deserved to die. It should be those bad people who ignored the law and morality. Especially after my death. None of them received the punishment they deserved. Probably because my resentment was too strong. I didn't leave. Instead, I floated in my dream in the form of a soul. At this moment, Chase had sobered up from the alcohol and was kneeling on the ground begging my mother. "Auntie, I really didn't mean it. Summer seduced me. And I couldn't resist for a moment. I really didn't mean to hurt her. Auntie, you have to save me. You've taken care of me since I was a child. I can be considered half your son. I don't have a mother. And my father doesn't care about me either. I just like Summer too much. And I really didn't expect this to happen. Auntie, as long as you promise not to call the police, I'll be your son from now on. And I'll take care of you when you're old." I have to say, Chase knows how to hit the nail on the head. And my mother, at first, stood there, probably stunned. But when she saw Chase kneeling down, her hand instinctively reached out to help him up. "You can't kneel to me, young master. Get up and talk." A trace of triumph flashed in Chase's eyes. And he tentatively asked, "So, Auntie, you agree?" My mother turned her head and looked at me in the room who had already lost my breath. As if making up her mind. She said, "What's done is done. What good would it do to make you pay with your life? Summer can't come back either. Perhaps out of guilt." 2 lines of tears rolled down from the corners of her eyes. I just felt a chill all over my body. And my heart was extremely cold. Who would believe that these were the words a mother could say? Her own daughter was dead right in front of her. And the murderer convinced her with just a few words. But it seems I've forgotten. In my mother's eyes, Chase is more important than anyone else. What am I to her? Am I the liar she calls me? Or the little green tea? By the way, Chase taught her to say that. There were several boys in the class who would usually come to me to discuss exercises. And because I have a pure and innocent appearance, he spread the word everywhere that I was a green tea bitch. Most of the time, I felt that Chase had an inexplicable hatred for me. And my mother's words also completely put Chase at ease. "Auntie. Oh no, Mom. Then let me take care of Summer's body?" A trace of struggle flashed in my mother's eyes. And finally, she nodded in agreement. In the room, Chase glared fiercely at my face. He reached out and pinched it hard. "Damn it. You wouldn't let me touch you even when you're dead. Summer. You're really something. But you're dead after all. Was it worth it? Did you think you could make me pay for it with your life? You're really daydreaming. Even if your mother didn't agree, I still had other ways to get away with it. You can't outsmart me." I watched all this, so angry that I almost vomited blood. Yes, Cuttins, I died like this. And I'm not willing to accept it. The bad guys haven't been punished yet. This shouldn't be my ending. Chase deserves to go to hell. I hate him. And I hate my mother. Overwhelmed by intense unwillingness, I blacked out. It was as if I was trapped in a huge whirlpool. I couldn't see anything clearly. And the bits and pieces of my life kept flashing through my mind. Summer. The young master is really attached to me. I'll be back as soon as he falls asleep. Summer. If only you were a boy too. Then your father wouldn't have cheated and run away with another woman because of this. Summer. The young master knows about you. And he asked President Chase to arrange for you to enter the school he's in. It's a prestigious noble school. I never even dared to dream of such a thing before. You must study hard and repay the young master in the future. Summer. Why are you being disobedient again? You have to make the young master angry. Everything you eat and wear now is provided by the young master's family. He's like your provider. One should know how to be grateful. The young master said he didn't bully you. Did you stage it all by yourself? He's so rich. What about you is worth his attention? Summer. You're growing up too. When you don't have classes, come to the Chase family to help me. Okay? The young master said you have a relationship with several male classmates. Is that true? Summer. Today is the young master's coming-of-age ceremony. He invited a lot of people. You must come to the villa and help me. It was on that day that ended my 18-year-old life. In my memory, 9 out of 10 sentences my mother said were about the Chase family. When I was 6 years old, my father's mistress gave birth to a son. And he immediately embezzled all the savings in the family and eloped with his mistress overnight, probably lacking the courage. My mother chose to bear all this silently. 2 months later, she signed the divorce agreement. Since then, she started raising me on her own. A year later, my mother became a nanny for the Chase family. It is said that there were a total of more than 20 people interviewed at that time. And my mother won without any pressure. The reason was simple. Chase's mother had just passed away. And the thoughts of the others were all focused on the male master of the Chase family. If they could become the mistress of the family, who would want to be a nanny? But only my mother focused on Chase. She understood the psychology of a child who had lost his mother. With just a few gentle looks and words of concern, she won Chase's approval. It can also be said that in the end, Chase chose my mother. Perhaps it was fate. Chase had always been very attached to my mother. He specified her for everything related to his daily life. And she couldn't go home until he fell asleep at night. For many nights, I stayed up alone at home waiting for her with my eyes wide open. Later, Chase learned about me. Without even asking for my opinion, he asked his father to transfer me to another school. To be honest, I didn't like that so-called noble school. It was there that I realized that people are indeed divided into different classes. People like me, who have no money and no status at home, are destined to be stepped on. The first time I met Chase, I only remembered his overly flamboyant face. Here, you have to listen to me in everything. Otherwise, the consequences will be severe. Do you understand, little white rabbit? At that time, I didn't realize the meaning behind his words. It wasn't until he asked to read my diary and I refused that I knew there were really demons in this world. On that day, my diary, which recorded the thoughts of a young girl, was read out loud in public by him. Everyone was laughing. And I was pinned down on the desk, unable to move. After that, I don't know if it was under Chase's instructions, but everyone stopped playing with me. In my opinion, this was actually a good thing. I could focus all my attention on my studies. Although my family background couldn't compare with others, I could excel in my studies. And that was the only thing I could be proud of. But Chase, that troublemaker, wouldn't let me go so easily. In the second year of junior high school, under his instigation, I was dragged into the boys' restroom by several people and was forced to endure their vulgar pranks. From then on, I began to hate Chase and even asked my mother to quit her job as a nanny. But she strongly opposed it. Have you lost your sense of self after seeing the life of the wealthy for a few days? If I don't work for the Chase family, where can you have the life you have now? Let alone go to the same school as the young master of the Chase family. In your entire life, you'll never be able to get close to someone like the young master. I really wanted to laugh. All of this was arranged for me. And no one ever asked me if I was willing. Even if I get close to him. So what? Do you really think we can fit in? This time, it was her turn to be silent. She would never know that although I have a name, people at school always call me the nanny's daughter. Rather than saying that my mother couldn't bear to give up this job, it's more accurate to say that she couldn't bear to part with Chase. Most of the time, I felt that Chase was more like her child. No matter what happened, the scale in her heart always tilted towards Chase. Later, in high school, everyone grew up, and I did look quite good. At this age, most people can basically distinguish right from wrong. And there were fewer people who collaborated with Chase. But whenever other boys approached me, Chase would come to cause trouble for me. Chase's sworn enemy. To annoy him, asked if he liked me. What was Chase's reaction at that time? He was both anxious and angry. And he punched that person frantically. How could I like her? Does she deserve it? She's just an Annie's daughter. See? I only deserve his bullying. Liking me is a shameful thing. I never dreamed that I would have the chance to open my eyes again. Looking at Chase's magnified face, I was stunned for a long time. I was actually reborn. And I was reborn at the crucial moment when Chase was trying to violate me. That night, it was Chase's coming-of-age ceremony. And he invited many classmates from school. Because of my mother's order, I had to go and help, and inevitably, I became the target of everyone's entertainment and ridicule. However, on such an important day, Chase's father was absent due to work, which was probably one of the reasons why Chase got drunk. After the party ended, I helped my mother clean up the messy villa. Until Chase called me in the room. My mother handed me a bowl of hangover soup from the kitchen and motioned for me to take it in. As soon as I stepped into the room, I was hugged from behind, and Chase's eager kiss landed on the back of my neck. He was breathing heavily. I've been waiting for this day. Summer. Be with me. In my previous life, I resisted desperately, but didn't get the slightest bit of pity from him. In the end, he choked me to death in a fit of anger. This time, I told myself to stay calm and find every possible way to get away. I've already died once. When my mother appeared at the door of the room after hearing the commotion, I begged her to save me. But she was always thinking about Chase and didn't care that her own daughter was about to be raped. Instead, she calmly persuaded me. It's your blessing to be favored by the young master. One should know how to be grateful. Consider this as your repayment. Would you like to have such a blessing? I actually did it. While Chase was focused, I used all my strength to break free from his hold. At this moment, my mother's hand was on the doorknob, about to close the door for us. Should I say she's thoughtful or disgusting? Anyway, in my previous life, she didn't even know I was dead until a long time after she closed the door. This time, I will never let them succeed. With lightning speed, I pulled and pushed, and in an instant, I switched positions with my mother. Under her shocked gaze, I locked the door. Wasn't it about repayment? It doesn't have to be me. Does it? As a mother, shouldn't she set an example? I pressed my ear against the door. The noises inside told me that Chase was indeed drunk. A trace of pleasure from revenge flashed through my mind. I didn't stay any longer and left the villa. That night, my mother didn't come home. Just like countless nights before, I lay there with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling and letting time pass by. However, now all I could think about was how to take revenge on them. In the morning, my mother came back. She looked extremely tired. My gaze shifted downward, and sure enough, I saw many marks on her neck. But this action immediately enraged my mother. She was both anxious and angry. She raised her hand as if to hit me and said, "Look at the good thing you've done." I had been on my guard and managed to avoid her blow. "Thank you for the compliment, Mom. In the future, if there's such a good thing, I'll still let you have it. After all, you're my mother." She was obviously very angry. Her eyes wide with fury. "You little wretch. You still know I'm your mother? How could such a thing be my doing? How am I supposed to face Chase in the future?" As she spoke, she chased after me trying to hit me. Since I was younger than her, I easily dodged her attempts. In the end, she was so exhausted that she collapsed on the ground and burst into tears. I remained unmoved. My heart had long since died along with the old me. Then have you ever thought about how I would face it if such a thing happened to me? My mother stopped crying and looked at me in disbelief. Being favored by the young master of the Chase family is a blessing that you've cultivated over 8 lifetimes. What else are you not satisfied with? I laughed. But did you ever ask for my consent? What's there for you to be unwilling about? I'm your mother. Would I harm you? Following him, at least you'll have enough food and clothing. Otherwise, Do you want to be like me? Living under someone else's roof and begging for a living for the rest of your life? If I hadn't seen with my own eyes how indifferent she was to my death, I might still have believed her words and thought that she was truly doing this for my own good. But alas, the daughter who loved her is already dead. Killed by them. Even if I end up like you in the future, what does it matter? Every profession in this world deserves respect. As long as I earn money through my own hard work, there's nothing to be ashamed of. But it's absolutely impossible for me to sell my soul and morals to rely on others. Well, you still shouldn't have pushed me into it. I'm your mother. I walked up to her, bent down, and smiled sarcastically. If I didn't push you, was I supposed to wait for you to close the door? And would I still have a chance to escape? She pointed at me hysterically. You clearly had other choices. But you chose the most heartless way. I watched Chase grow up. How could I have a relationship with him? It's really a sin. Actually, when it comes to being heartless, it's most appropriate to describe you and Chase with that word. I'm just treating you in the same way you treated me. I still have to go to class. I'm leaving. I clenched the voice recorder in my hand. For the first time, I was actually a bit looking forward to seeing Chase. What would his reaction be? Chase's perspective won when that woman appeared. It was as if I saw my dead mother. My father said that I could choose an Annie exclusively for myself from that group of people. I knew that he didn't want to take care of me anymore. Because he had another family outside. And that's why my mother committed suicide. You could say that my mother was killed by my father. He never loved my mother. He only married her because of the interests of the company. So he didn't like me either. But I knew that I couldn't change anything. And I definitely wouldn't grovel for his little bit of love. My father seemed satisfied with the nanny I chose. After observing for a while, he completely left me in her care. I suddenly felt a bit regretful. Should I have chosen a less competent one so that he might come back to see me occasionally? But when I thought about how those women's eyes were practically glued to my father, I decided against it. I already had a younger brother who would share the family property with me. And I didn't want any more. Auntie was very kind to me. She took care of everything in detail. No matter what I did, she would always be on my side. When I was 7 years old, I beat up the chubby kid next door so badly that his head almost split open. When my father showed up, he was with the woman he was keeping outside. I heard that they were going to get married. How ridiculous. Well, I wished them an unhappy ending. The neighbor's family was also wealthy. They didn't want compensation. They insisted on hitting me back. My father agreed. Only Auntie spoke up for me. She stood in front of me and said that they could hit her instead. At that moment, my eyes welled up with tears. In the end, the neighbor's family compromised. And Auntie held me and comforted me. At that time, I thought that if it could always be like this, it would be okay. I could just treat her as my mother. But later I found out that she actually had a daughter at home who was the same age as me. Once I was sick and I kept holding on to her at night and wouldn't let her go home. I didn't like that old housekeeper. He loved to tattle the most. It was getting really late. So Auntie finally told me that she had a daughter waiting for her at home. I suddenly let go of my hand. It was as if at that moment I understood that in this world, no one would stay for me specifically. The mother I had wholeheartedly relied on had heartlessly left me alone. And my own father was busy starting a new family with someone else. Even the nanny I had chosen myself was thinking about her own child. She was only nice to me because it was her job. Was I just doomed to be abandoned by the world? I refused to believe it. At my father's wedding, I pretended to be well-behaved and sensible. When they weren't paying attention, I fed a large glass of white wine to my 4-year-old younger brother. Why should their family of 3 be able to lie happily on my mother's grave? I was determined to ruin it all. My father was extremely angry that day. It hurt so much when the clothes hanger whipped my body. But I didn't make a sound. He kept saying that he wanted to beat me to death. And anyway, he had plenty of money and could have as many sons as he wanted. He was right. I was nothing. Finally, heading fulfilled land sorry. Auntie showed up and held me to block my father's violent beating. The matter was only settled when the doctor announced that my younger brother was out of danger. The mistress's eyes were full of venom, as if she wanted to cut me into pieces. Somehow, A brief sense of pleasure flashed through my heart. This feeling seemed quite good, and I was kind of addicted to it. There's still a long time ahead. I, Chase, will definitely not let go of those who have taken what belongs to me. When I was 11 years old, my father surprisingly came back to celebrate my birthday with me. I knew it was because I had gotten the first place in school. He was a businessman and always knew how to make investments. When he asked me what my wish was, I asked to transfer Summer to my school. My father only thought about it briefly and then agreed. He also promised to cover all of Summer's tuition fees. Auntie, who was standing beside me, looked at me with gratitude in her eyes. I smiled and pursed my lips. From now on, she should treat me even better. Right? But that girl named Summer wasn't so lucky. The first time I saw her, I was quite surprised. She was pretty. Like a little rabbit. Soft and cute, but she wasn't very obedient. Her mother had to listen to me. So what was she being stubborn about? It didn't matter. I would teach her how to behave. Since then, bullying Summer had become one of the great pleasures of my childhood. I liked to see her glaring at me with those black eyes. But being unable to do anything to me. I liked to see her nose all red from crying and her stubborn look as she bit her lips. Why was she as pure as a piece of paper and still had a mother who loved her? She should be like me. See more of the darkness of this world. It would be best if she could stay in this abyss with me. Every day after school, I could see her mother before she did. Auntie liked to ask me about things at school, and I would always casually say some bad things about Summer. I suddenly thought of a phrase, the villain sues first. That's right. It was about me. I wanted to see whose words she would believe. The first time Summer came to my house was because I said she had a relationship with several boys at school. In a fit of anger, she actually came to confront me. That day, I stood on the stairs with my hands in my pockets, looking down at her condescending. She glared at me, and the hatred in her eyes almost overflowed. I was calm and composed, enjoying the feeling of being in control of everything. I started questioning Auntie and Butler Liu why they had let an irrelevant person in. At 15 years old, I already had a strong enough aura. They looked at me nervously, afraid that a single word from me would cost them their jobs. Auntie grabbed Summer and told her to apologize to me in a very harsh tone, which was the first time I had ever seen her like that. Summer said she didn't do anything wrong. She was still too naive. Even in this situation, she couldn't see the situation clearly. Even if she was right, she should admit it. Tears of humiliation welled up in her eyes, and she pressed her lips tightly together, refusing to speak. It didn't matter. Someone would do it for her. Auntie lowered herself to the lowest level and apologized for Summer. With each word she said, the light in Summer's eyes dimmed a little. At the same time, a voice in my heart kept shouting, "That's it. Destroy her. Destroy her by any means necessary." Although my younger brother was safe that time, his intelligence was affected, and he was always at the bottom of the class. Auntie often told me to be on my guard against my stepmother. Mom? Did she even deserve that title? In my eyes, she would always be a mistress, not fit to be seen in public. No, she probably didn't have the time to deal with me. I heard that she had been recuperating, preparing to have a second child. However, the hospital she went to, the director was my mother's cousin. It was highly unlikely that she would successfully get pregnant. These things weren't worth my time and effort because they were no match for me at all. I still preferred to play tricks on Summer. I watched as, despite my constant interference, she still had excellent grades, and her figure and appearance were also outstanding, making her more and more noticeable. This wasn't good. I would feel frustrated and couldn't help but want to destroy it all. Summer. I will pick this flower sooner or later and then crush it repeatedly. Why should she live in the light? That day, I didn't see Chase at school. I couldn't help but think viciously that it would be best that he was so depressed that he committed suicide. That would be an eye for an eye. But as the saying goes, the wicked live for a long time. When school was over, Chase suddenly appeared downstairs at my house. Under the old and dim streetlight, his attire looked out of place. When his gaze met mine, something flashed in his eyes. I spoke first. "Chase, Why are you here? Chase stared at me without saying a word. I didn't know what he was up to. Since you're not here to see me, then I'm going up. But just as I passed by Chase, he suddenly grabbed my arm and asked, "What time did you leave last night?" It seemed that he wanted to confirm whether I knew about what had happened last night. I blinked my eyes innocently and smiled. "After you got drunk. It was too late. So my mother told me to go home first." He secretly let out a sigh of relief and then looked around with disdain. "You live in this kind of place? It's in such a bad state. There isn't even a doorman. I didn't ask you to come. If you dislike it, Chase, head info in session. You can just leave." This area was an old residential community, built in the early 1990s. Naturally, the facilities couldn't keep up, but I had lived here for more than 10 years. And the neighbors around were quite nice. Chase sneered. "I'm doing you a favor by coming here. We're classmates. Aren't you going to invite me up for a cup of tea? Go up?" He must think I'm stupid. Yes, I was stupid before. I listened to my mother and endured him for so long. My family drinks tap water. I'm afraid you, young master, will get diarrhea if you drink it. You'd better go back. Chase didn't expect me to not give him any face. He snorted coldly and said, "I'm not leaving today." "Then do as you please." I carried my school bag and went upstairs. Chase immediately followed me. However, I didn't go back to my own home. Instead, I went to the home of a sister on the 3rd floor. Her father is a policeman, and he should be off work at this time. Sure enough, when I knocked on the door, Uncle still hadn't taken off his police uniform. I don't know what purpose Chase had for following me, but as soon as he saw the situation in the room clearly, he cursed in a low voice and then left. Sister Du asked me worriedly if I was in trouble and said that her father was a policeman, and I could ask him for help if I had any difficulties. My heart warmed. Sister Du is a few years older than me. When I was a child, I used to stay at home alone after school. Later, when she found out, she often invited me to her home to do homework with her. And sometimes I even had dinner at her house. As time passed, we became extremely familiar with each other. I politely declined their kindness. After all, I don't have enough confidence to deal with Chase yet, and I can't implicate others. My mother has been in a trance these days and goes straight to her room when she gets home. In the morning, I asked her if she wanted breakfast, but she just glanced at me and then left the house. Since I started high school, my mother hasn't cooked a single meal for me. I either solve it myself or eat outside. She goes to the Chase family at 6 o'clock every day and even eats the breakfast I made. In fact, there have long been signs that she doesn't love me. At the first parents' meeting, I called her to come, but she was busy making wontons for Chase and didn't show up for a long time. By the time she arrived, the meeting had already ended. When I got my first period, I didn't understand and was so anxious that I cried. And since I didn't have enough money on me and didn't know what to do, she just said, "The first time the amount isn't much. You can bear it for a while. Mom will buy it for you after work." It was Sister Du who helped me in the end. Just like all children have a beautiful vision of their mothers. I waited and waited, thinking that when she earned enough money, she could spend more time with me. Instead of coming home every day to face an empty house, only being able to talk for a few words in the dead of night and then quickly urging me to go to bed early. In fact, what I'm missing is not just my childhood, but also the maternal love that every child should have. A few days later, rumors started to spread in school. It was said that Chase had an affair with the nanny in his family. Everyone spread it vividly, and many onlookers came to ask me, "Summer, isn't the nanny of Chase's family your mother? Do you know about this?" God, I really didn't expect that he has such a hobby. No wonder he doesn't like so many young girls in the prime of their lives at school. Even you, who are at the level of a school beauty, he is indifferent to. So that's the reason. By the way, Summer, you are so beautiful. You should have inherited it from your mother. Right? In the toilet, I was surrounded by several girls. But I didn't answer them because those people used to make fun of me like this before. During this time, I don't know who shouted that Chase was coming. Suddenly, Those people ran away with their tails between their legs. Chase exuded a gloomy aura all over, with red bloodshot eyes. He gritted his teeth and asked word by word, "Was it you? Did you do this?" "No. Liar." Chase grabbed my throat, and I was forced against the washed sand in the toilet. A strong sense of suffocation hit me, as if I had returned to the previous life when he choked me like this. I kept slapping and begging him with my eyes, hoping he would spare me. But he remained indifferent. Will I die at his hands again this time? No, it's absolutely impossible. Suddenly, a figure appeared outside the door. "Chase. Do you want to kill someone?" The person who came was Chase's sworn enemy, Noah. Upon hearing this, Chase's hand froze, and I took the opportunity to break free. Chase, you're really asking for trouble now. Not only did you sleep with someone's mother, but you also want to silence them by killing them. As soon as these words came out, a trace of bloodlust flashed in Chase's eyes. Then he picked up his fist and punched Noah. "Watch your mouth. You dare to do it but not admit it. And you even dare to attack someone at school. You're a scum in human skin." The two soon got into a fight. If I remember correctly, having fulfilled Wad Sashar, Noah has learned Taekwondo. Every time Chase fights with him, he doesn't get any benefits. So Chase quickly fell at a disadvantage. This was a good opportunity. I seized the moment and kicked Chase several times. Feeling that it wasn't enough to relieve my anger, I scratched several blood marks on his face with my nails. In the end, Noah was afraid that things would get out of hand and pulled me out and ran. After running out, I suddenly felt scared. Will Chase report us to the school? Noah didn't answer my question immediately. Instead, he looked at me with great interest and said, "I didn't expect that you're quite good at fighting." I felt a little embarrassed. This is the first time I'd done such a thing. I really wouldn't have dared before. It turns out that when you hate someone, you can really lose your rationality. "Don't be afraid. I'll cover for you if anything happens." Noah comforted me. "Besides, this is the girls' toilet. If Chase dares to make it public, it's like admitting that he's a pervert." In fact, I didn't have much interaction with Noah before. As the saying goes, the enemy of an enemy is a friend. Chase's stepmother is Noah's aunt. I just found out recently. This is probably one of the reasons why the two of them have always been at odds. Chase didn't come to school for several days in a row. With his current face, he probably doesn't want to show himself in public. When I got home from school that day, my mother, for the first time, got home earlier than me. When she saw me come in, she immediately looked at me with venomous eyes and started cursing. "How could I have raised such an unfilial daughter? I should have strangled you to death as soon as you were born. I work so hard outside to earn money for you to spend. And this is how you repay me? I've lived for more than 40 years. And I didn't expect to be defeated by you. You little bitch. So many people die every day. Why hasn't it been your turn yet?" I stood at the door and coldly watched her curse me with the most vicious words in the world. "You came back so early for the first time. You didn't just come back to scold me, did you?" She jumped up in anger. "Why did you spread the story about me and Chase at school? What's the benefit for you to ruin him?" "I didn't do that." Whether she believes it or not, it really wasn't me who spread it in school. If it wasn't you, then who else could it be? You've loved lying since you were a child. And now you're ungrateful. Where have you put all the books you've read over the years? I really raised you for nothing. The Chase family even paid so much money for your tuition fees." I smiled coldly. "Yeah, I'm a liar. And I bite the hand that feeds me. In your eyes, I'm not as good as Chase in anything. But what's annoying is that I'm the one you gave birth to. This useless daughter, am the one you gave birth to." She seemed to suddenly understand. "I see. You've always been holding a grudge. So you took the opportunity to get revenge. Summer, you're really vicious." I took a deep breath, knowing that it's impossible to reason with such a person. "Forget it. Think whatever you want. Fortunately, it's the last semester of high school. Soon, I can get rid of this kind of life. I've already made up my mind. For the college entrance examination volunteers. I will definitely fill in schools far away and won't stay here. Outside the window, dark clouds filled the sky, making the night even more deathly silent. But I know that no matter how long the night is, the dawn will always come. 11. I never expected that Chase would appear in my home. After opening the door, the light from the stairwell shone into the house. Chase was completely shrouded in the darkness, like a ghost coming to claim my life from hell. He no longer had the high spirits he used to have. Fortunately, hadn't fulfilled and sigh. I was prepared in advance. Or I would have been really scared. I pretended not to see him and reached out to turn on the light in the living room. The next second, my hand was grabbed by someone. Summer. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Ghost. I was so scared that I immediately jumped up and slapped him in the face with my other hand. However, there is a huge disparity in strength between men and women. And I was quickly stopped by Chase. I don't know where he found a rope and tied me up. Chase. Please let me go. I really didn't spread the story about you and my mother. Why don't you believe me? I tried my best to make my expression look weak and pitiful. But Chase won't show any mercy to me. His rough fingertips tightly pinched my chin. And he smiled creepily. This doesn't seem like you. My heart sank. Oh no. Did I give myself away? Then I heard him say, "You have a camera here, right? Guess how I know?" He suddenly leaned close to my ear. And his breath hit my face, making me feel nauseous. "Of course your mother told me. By the way, she also said that you pushed her into my room that night to save yourself. Summer. I have bullied you. But you can't ruin me. If you ruin me, do you know that this will be a stain on my life that I can never wash away?" He looked crazy. And his hand slowly tightened around my throat inch by inch. I looked terrified. And my body kept shaking. Chase suddenly laughed loudly. "Now you know you're scared? There's something even more terrifying coming. I just checked. Your camera is very clear. The effect of the photos must be very good. Do you think if I process the video, only keep your shots, and then send it online, will you also be unable to hold your head up for the rest of your life? Just like me?" Summer. You should stay with me in this hell. You've always wanted to get rid of all this through the college entrance examination, right? In your dreams. Chase tore at my clothes like a madman. I looked at him with pity in my eyes. Only a deformed family could raise such a psychologically twisted pervert. He was both pitiful and hateful. Chase became even angrier. "Why are you looking at me like that? You're clearly just the lowest of the low in this world. A mere ant. Why do you have that look of compassion? You should feel sorry for yourself. I'll make you pay the price for scheming against me." Chase. Just as he tried to take off my vest, the door was opened from the outside. Sister Dew from the third floor appeared at the door with her policeman father. Chase reacted quickly and immediately stood up and smashed the camera. Taking this opportunity, Uncle Dew rushed up and handcuffed Chase. "You little rascal. I knew you weren't a good person the last time I saw you." Sister Dew immediately picked up a piece of clothing and covered me with it. And then untied the ropes that were binding me. Chase tried to run away. But Uncle Dew kicked him down with a roundhouse kick and then tied him up with the rope that had been used to tie me. At this moment, Chase still didn't forget to threaten. "Let me go. If you dare to arrest me, I'll make you pay for it." Uncle Dew was a bit angry. He brought over a stool, placed it on Chase, and then sat down on it. "Even if your father is the king of heaven today, it won't do you any good. If I don't send you to jail, all these decades of my work would have been in vain." Uncle Dew has always been upright and impartial. And that's why I trusted him enough to seek his help. I walked up to Chase and squatted down. "Chase. You've committed so many evils. And this day was bound to come to you sooner or later. It's clearly you who couldn't control your lust. Yet you have to say that others have harmed you. I didn't force you to do such filthy things. How can you have the nerve to blame others? Also, the camera was very clear. And it's a pity that you destroyed it. But before I came home, I shared the device. And the video has definitely been saved." I slapped his face hard. "Enjoy your prison meals." Why was I so confident? Because there was someone who hated Chase even more than I did. And how could she let this opportunity slip away? 12 Uncle Du called 2 of his colleagues. And they took Chase back to the police station together. Sister Du was worried and insisted on staying with me. It's really sad to have such a mother. I forced a smile and said, "You're right. Ever since my father eloped with his mistress, she's been blaming me for everything." Later, Chase relied on her so much, which somewhat made up for her regret of not having a son. What's more, I just found out recently that I'm not her biological daughter at all. I'm just an adopted child she took in as a tool to tie down her husband. Sister Du was very angry. "This isn't your fault. Whether it's your father's infidelity or your mother's favoritism towards Chase, it's their problem. You're a great person, Summer. Really." I hugged her tightly and let my tears flow freely. "Thank you, Sister Du. Meeting you is one of the greatest blessings in my life." That night was peaceful and beautiful. A moon peeked out, and the bright moonlight filled the whole room. Sister Du and I lay on the same bed, sharing our dreams with each other. I will definitely succeed in the postgraduate entrance examination. I will also definitely get into my dream university. 13 In the coffee shop. The woman sitting across from me had a delicate makeup and was well maintained. She exuded the air of a wealthy lady. This was the wife that Chase's father had married later. She took off the sunglasses on her face and gave me a sweet smile. "I released the news without your permission before. You won't hold it against me, will you?" She was talking about the affair between Chase and my mother. When I found her, to show my sincerity, I told her the news. That's why she agreed to cooperate with me to deal with Chase. When Chase sneaked into my house, she also informed me of the news in advance. I should be thanking you. There's no way I would blame you. Even if I had known, I wouldn't have stopped her. To defeat someone, you have to destroy their psychological defenses first. It seemed that she remembered something. "I heard that your father also. Actually, you must be quite reluctant to cooperate with me in your heart, right, Anestrus? But isn't the man at fault too? I'm selfish. I can't care so much about others. And I won't casually judge people and things I don't understand." She hesitated for a moment but still slowly revealed. "Actually, I'm not a mistress. We started dating in college, and I accompanied him through his entrepreneurial journey. Later, when the company was having trouble with its capital flow, Chase's mother suddenly appeared and threatened him with the survival of the company. She said she just wanted a child. When I was with him, they were already divorced. It's just that Chase didn't know. His mother jumped off the building because she was diagnosed with advanced breast cancer. But Chase framed my child and made me unable to have children for life. Now even his father doesn't care about him. So I will never let him out again." I smiled somewhat cruelly. "Auntie, why don't you tell him all the truth? After all, the physical and mental torture is even more painful." 14 After Chase got into trouble, my mother naturally lost her job. She's been in a trance recently. And she's not quite right in the head. As soon as she wakes up, she starts cooking. If no one eats it, she throws it away and cooks again. The refrigerator is stuffed with wrapped wontons. She said that Chase likes them the most. What's even worse is that she seems to have noticed that Chase is missing. And she goes out to look for him every day. She almost got hit by a car several times. In order to keep living, I accessed her bank account. When I saw the more than 2 million yuan in her card, I fell into deep thought. She really didn't care about me in her heart. Before, because of the stress of my studies, I had said many times that I would eat outside in the morning. But to save a few yuan, she insisted that I get up at 5 o'clock to make breakfast. She would only buy me new clothes when the old ones were too worn out to be worn anymore. For a wealthy family, more than 2 million yuan might just be a month's pocket money. But for an ordinary family like ours, it could really make our lives much better. In the final analysis, I wasn't worthy of her care. So, before the college entrance examination, I sent her to a psychiatric hospital. A month later, the college entrance examination was over. Noah specifically came to ask me about my college application. In the milk tea shop, I ordered a cup of grape with cheese. After taking a sip, I shook my head and said, "I haven't decided yet." He looked a bit disappointed when he heard that. "Summer. Actually, I came here to tell you something else. I looked at him. His ears were so red that they seemed to be bleeding. He quickly explained. Don't get me wrong. Actually, I want to apologize to you. I knew that you were being bullied by Chase before. If I had stood up earlier and spoken up for you, maybe things wouldn't have turned out like this. The sweet taste of the grapes filled my taste buds. I chuckled softly. It doesn't matter. Even I didn't have the courage to fight back before. Let alone you. Besides, you did help me later. He mumbled softly. That was also what my aunt told me to do. Noah. Make peace with your past self. Look forward. We will all have a bright future. People in this world are so diverse. Some people are constantly showing their kindness. Some people, when they're in the dark, will try every means to drag others down with them. In life, we don't always get a chance to start over. So, when we're treated unfairly, please be brave and fight back. The end.